Thank you for staying with us on SME Fast Track. While fashion, beauty, music, food and technology are some trending business areas a lot of entrepreneurs are venturing into, this one industry may not be as popular, but its purpose is transformational and deeply rooted in achieving one objective: to educate the nation. Is book publishing a thriving business in Nigeria? On the show today, we'll be speaking with Anwuli Ojogwu, Managing Director, Narrative Landscape Press Limited. Anwuli will be sharing insights on the Nigerian publishing industry, business opportunities, and how technology is changing the game. You're welcome to the show, Anwuli.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we'll begin with what exactly is publishing, book publishing?
Okay, it's a good thing that you're very specific about what kind of publishing, because I mean there are different kinds of publishing you can go into.
Yes.
So book publishing is more or less the production of contents that is produced in book form. It could be anything. It could be in any genre. Usually we divide them into genre. It could be educational books. They could be trade books, which is the story books that people read. They could be motivational books, recreational books. They could be in different forms, but more or less they are the production of books in a format with paper and binded in a particular way, for different purposes, to entertain, to educate, and in whatever ways that appeals to the kind of people that we're trying to reach.
Okay, because you have described it for us, I'm sure that it's a business that a lot of entrepreneurs have ventured into, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show. But let's talk about Africa. We know that, according to reports, that it's a $1 billion industry and it's growing at a 6% rate. Do you agree with this figure? That Africa is business that's thriving at that rate and has potential to even increase over time?
Yeah, I mean 1 billion is 1 billion.
1 billion
for an
yes.
entire continent is. It may seem reasonable, but I mean the United States of America does more in terms of. I think it does more than. I know it does more than 1 billion. I cannot say accurately. Maybe 4. So that's one country. So, yes, I mean, I think that we are, despite the challenges that we go through, I think it's a start. It's a good thing. We don't necessarily have access to the kind of data that is being drawn and how we all align all these numbers together to see how it is that we're working, especially on the continent we have. Those are the challenges that we're on. But it would be, I would agree that that is fair to say that we produce that volume of books and to that value every annually. That would be a good thing.
Okay. Would you say that you have an idea of the various countries where this industry is growing and thriving, especially African countries? And you could also speak specifically about Nigeria.
Well, I know that usually it depends on where you have a thriving book culture. And a lot of times, the industry, especially in the African continent, the publishing industry is actually a lot of times supported by the government. And a lot of times, majority of the books that earn or are produced to earn, also to generate that volume of revenue, are actually in educational books, which are very necessary, which a lot of times government has to impute. So on the African continent, despite the fact that we have trade books, and like I mentioned, the other kind of books, a lot of times the emphasis is on educational books. But I mean, if you're talking about having a very active reading culture and a very high, maybe not high, but I mean fair literacy rate in the country where they actively are interested in books and it's purchased. One of the countries that come to mind is South Africa, and even in the North Africa, with Morocco being North Africa, I think. So I mean they have a thriving publishing industry, and I mean it comes with a lot of things as well because they have systems in place that actually engender the sort of culture. Like one of the things I should mention that it helps the sort of things is having libraries and bookstores.
Yes.
So if you have these things, you can be able to encourage more reading, you know, for people. So South Africa has that really going for them very well. In Nigeria, we have, I mean, one of the things that we've always argued or we've always questioned is, do Nigerians read?
Yeah.
Nigerians do read, but another argument that we have is what kind of books do they read? And we have settled on the fact that Nigerians read what they feel is of utility value, what they feel is relevant to them at the point. You know, so those who like to be entertained would read literary novels. Those who want to improve personal development will focus on the kind of books that they want to read. But we face our challenges. I wouldn't say majority of the books and the sales that are made here that generate a huge amount of value and revenue and add to the numbers come from educational books, which also has government support or the rest of it, and not necessarily from trade books that my company is invested in. Even though there's a merge, sometimes publishing companies do a lot more. They do educational, they do trade. Some people just focus on educational, but a lot of the books come from educational, which you could say is not focused on entertaining based on what you were asking, like who reads the most.
Yes.
So you would think that, okay, probably reading should be for leisure. So I wouldn't say it's particularly leisure that drives, you know, that we have actively here, but more or less education, which brings that kind of billions and millions that we're talking about.
Because I was actually going to ask you that question, what kind of books are more are sold heavily, especially in Nigeria?
Educational books, because you have them at secondary level, you have them at primary level, and they're necessary. You need them to educate, you know, children.
Yes.
And so you have people who have to produce these books, and you have government who have to support the education of these children. And so a lot of times, you know, with the Ministry of Education and all the other programs, you would definitely have an assured volume of money being invested in that area. So education is one of the biggest. One of the biggest. The second is religion.
Okay.
Yes, religion is forgive me. Religion is one of the second from the report that I saw.
Yes.
Religion is actually the second biggest popular kind of book that is produced in Nigeria, from the Bible to the devotionals to the prayer books, and even the books that are imported and pirated. You know, those are this other kind of books. Then trade books, which is literary novels and the rest of them, the commercial books are the recreational books and the rest of them now follow. So that's, you know, sort of the ways that we consume and appreciate books in Nigeria.
In this country. Fantastic. I was going to ask, what is the creative process like?
In producing a book?
In producing a book, yes.
Oh.
Because I visited your website and I was just really wowed at the creativity, the colors, the design, the artworks used for some of these books and publishers, the authors. And I thought to myself, what is the creative
you know, before I answer that question, I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
So I had the opportunity one time, I was on vacation abroad, and so I went to the publishing company of one of the people that I admire, who owns a small publishing press in the US.
Yes.
And so I met his graphic editors, you know, people who are part of the process who create beautiful things that you see, like examples.
Yes.
And so I was speaking to them and I said, you know what, you create such beautiful covers. Like, how do you get that kind of inspiration to do that? And you're like, oh, you know what? That before they would just look at other people's covers and sort of try to get, you know, inspired by what other people are doing. But they said, but now they just walk through museums and try to get inspiration. And I'm like, oh my god, that is so amazing. Like, you're walking through museums to get inspiration
getting ideas.
For a cover.
Wow.
You know, so it's a joyful but a very it's a mesh of science and art.
Okay.
So basically, the art for the inspiration, to get the concept, it's, you know, to put everything in the whole ideas, or try to interpret what the person has written into art form, which has to be simple and maybe eclectic in a way. The science would be the technical part, the person interpreting what it is that you have now decided at the path that you want to go. So it's but basically, I mean, before it gets to that point, there's a whole thing about taking a person's idea in form of a manuscript page and reading it and just telling the person whether or not it works. And, you know, if the person is competent, it may not require a lot of work. You could take maybe a month.
Yes.
But if it's person is, there's a lot going on in there, it could take as much as 3 months.
Wow.
Standard trade books, I will explain later how publishing works.
Okay.
But I could, in summary, I could say that there are books that we invest our money in, and there are books that we don't invest our money in.
Okay.
In the books that we invest our money in, it can take as long as 6 months to put together just the text manuscript.
Wow.
To ensure that it is in the form that it should be.
Okay.
Before we move it to another stage where that's where the magic happens.
Okay.
With the ideas and translating it to colors and and craft and illustration. Before we go to print, before we release, before we market, before we promote, before we distribute to bookstores. So it's a very hectic but a very beautiful process. That, and that's basically like the stages of it. That we go through.
And you've touched on a lot of attributes. I would say creativity is a huge part of what you do.
Oh, yes.
So can you speak for someone listening and wanting to start and get into the business? What are those attributes that they need? Those skills. Just to get in. How did you even start? What is your story? How did you start? What are those things you found within yourself and you thought to yourself, wow, this is an industry I would do very well in?
Well, I would say that it started from when I was a child. I was a very nerdy child. Yes, I was a very nerdy child. But then I didn't think it translated to anything, to be honest.
Okay.
I just knew that I loved to read books. And my father encouraged it because my father was a masterful storyteller.
Yes.
People always said that their fathers told them books from storybooks.
Mm-hmm.
My father told us books from his head. And he made up all these amazing stories. Just a quick one, maybe just to entertain you. There used to be one about him being in the village and him running through a forest because he stayed out later than he should when his father told him to. And I would find myself, when we went to our village looking for that forest, I'm like, where is that forest? There was no forest. So my father was a masterful storyteller and sort of enveloped us, and we loved it. And then when we were in secondary school, he encouraged us more to pick literature as a subject and just to love it. And so we grew, and we grew fast, we read fast. So basically, I learned to love books that much. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have a guiding counselor in school to tell me, oh, this is because you love this. Maybe you should do this. So I stumbled into it by mistake. Wow. I happened to have gone to university and I read English and literature. And then when I came out, I was like, what do I do with this thing? Until I stumbled into, and that was the beginning of the renaissance of literature. That was the beginning when literature was being revived after a slum. And we were producing people like Chimamanda Adichie, who produced her first novel at the time and was making a sensation around the world. Even before it began to make a sensation around the world. So I found that company that that she had been signed on.
Yes.
And I still didn't know what it was about, but I just went to him and I said, hi, I want to work here. It seems like a fun place to work. And he said, you sure? And I'm like, yes. And he said, sure, come join me.
Okay.
And so after that it was a whirlwind. Don't get me wrong, it was hard because we were sort of building something that had been abandoned for a very long time. So sort of I worked with amazing people who have their own publishing companies now or are very successful writers, and so we sort of grew and grew and grew, and that is how I was an editor. I was a reader, then an editorial assistant, then an assistant editor, and I was promoted to a features editor, which I think is one of the best roles in the world. But yes, and I moved from books to magazine as well.
Okay.
And so that's how I grew to love literature, books.
Talk about passion turned into profit.
You know what I mean? So that was how I started.
Okay.
So anyone, I would say, who wants to go into this industry, I would say that, number one, publishing is pretty specialist. It's very important to know how it works, especially because sometimes, we have standards. Sometimes the way that we work here is the same way that the West works. It's just that a lot of times our own market is contracted because of the difficulties that we face. But it's very important. It's important because you need to understand some key things like, copyrights, rights in its own, and how to produce a book.
Okay.
Even the editorial process, which is the most important part of owning a publishing company. And it's not anyone who can do it. You have to make sure that you have trained editors who are there. So you have to get that done. You have to set up, you have to get printing partners. You have to employ your staff. You have to, and one of the things that a writer will not work with you, they don't trust you. So it's a business of trust. So if it's not like, it's not the kind of business where you're just trading over the counter, and you come back and you complain that it's not a good product. If a writer senses that you are, you're not trustworthy, they will work with you. So it's a business of trust. So you have to be, put yourself and be accountable and transparent as best as possible to be able to work with, with writers. So it's specialist. It's good that anyone who wants to enter knows how to understand the business. Go learn, go intern, apprentice in any business and learn how to write. It's very important.
Yes.
Go learn your grammar. It's very important. Go learn how to edit. It's very important. Go learn about printing processes. Learn about graphic designing processes. Learn about even clearing. Sometimes you may want to import books. You have to go and learn what your shipping guy says or your clearing guy says and everything, and how it all works together.
Comes together.
Yes, you have to know how the numbers work, how to price a book, so you have to know all these things to be able to, and it's a process and one that may take a bit of time.
Yes.
But if you don't learn these things, you may not be successful.
Amazing. There's a big industry. There's lots of things going on.
Yes, lots of things going on.
So let's talk about the profitability of the business.
Yes.
How is it in Nigeria? Is it profitable? And what are the challenges? What are the benefits? What are the challenges?
It can be profitable. We have, depending on the model that you adopt, so it can be profitable. Like if you're an educational publishing company, you can be profitable because you're producing, and especially if the books that you produce are being selected in or being used widely in private institutions and public institutions, you can make a profit. I mean, it's one of the most profitable areas, the educational aspect.
Okay.
For religion as well, there's a likelihood that you could actually make a lot of money. We are religious people, so it's a likelihood that you can make a lot of money from selling religious books as well. From trade books, which is the kind of books that we read, which is the Chimamanda and the rest of them, it's a difficult terrain in a way. Yes, it is, because sometimes you would feel like you have an audience, but not large an audience enough to make the kind of money that would keep you afloat.
Yes.
And it's not just us; it's everywhere in the world. There's a model. So abroad, it's the John Grishams. Then I produce a John Grisham.
I know John Grisham.
Exactly.
He's definitely
John Grisham is going to sell 10 million copies.
He will.
So I take John Grisham's money to be able to produce Toni Morrison's book.
Okay.
So that is my investment. So I produce more people like John Grisham to be able to produce more people who bring prestige to, because they are the ones who win the awards.
Yes.
Not the John Grishams. Not because of any disparity. It's just that the literary culture is different. It's more artsy, and we have a lot of awards. And those awards bring prestige. So, so you produce and put your book there. And people, funny enough, as much as they don't read Toni Morrison, they like to hear that Toni Morrison won an award. so that's that sort of thing. So it's a balance to be able to make money in that sense. So it can be profitable depending on the kind of model that you adopt or the kind of books that you produce.
Okay. You've identified 3 areas. So you said religion, education, and trade. And trade books. What other areas for someone who is there an opportunity that they need to look out for? Are there other aspects, other types of books that you're not seeing in the market, but you feel it's a business opportunity for someone trying to start out?
I mean, when I say trade books, it covers so many things. It could be a business book, cookbook, playbook, or different kinds of book. But you have to be very careful in Nigerian markets, because as much as these we are not, just to give you an example, if you watched the Food Network, you would notice that everything we do is in measurements. You take half a teaspoon of something.
Yes.
Please, do you know any Nigerian that measures? Any of the YouTube videos that you've watched that measures?
None, I haven't
No.
watched any.
So I'm not saying that because we are not that kind of people, but I'm saying that everything for us has always come from a source, maybe passed on from our mothers or something. So putting it in a book, when I know how to make jollof rice, we don't know whether your book will sell, unless you just want to dash people. Do you get it? Or like take a half tin of atorodo and tie it inside.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's going to sell. I mean, there was a time when it used to, when we used to have the Maggie Kitchen competition.
Yes. I think they still do. Well,
They don't do it anymore.
They do. They have a show.
They have a show, but
But
they don't
not
do
the
it anymore.
competition,
It was
yes.
beautiful. I was a child then, and I used to have neighbors who used to enter for the competition, and we were all men.
Wow.
Yes, not women who used to enter for the competition, and it was wonderful because after the competition, they would then produce the winning meals, which was fascinating because there was Hausa, Yoruba, and the rest of them. So there are different things. But I don't find Nigerians to be so curious as to want to buy a cookbook anymore. So a lot of times this production comes from sentimental things. Oh, I think I want to, you may find people who buy, but Nigerians are usually not the ones who go through books the way that Westerners,
Western world, yes.
they like to go through books and
For everything. Yeah.
Find that recipe and find that no, we're not that.
And they teach themselves.
And they teach themselves.
Yes.
We're not that kind of people. So you have to be very careful about what it is that you invest in.
Yes.
And also try to find the market that's appropriate for your needs.
Okay.
Just so that you are able to survive.
Okay. Let's talk about technology and how that's changing book publishing.
Technology.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thing that has happened in publishing.
Mm.
Publishing is a very funny space because we rarely have innovative things happen in the space.
Okay.
After the printing press, not a lot happened after that. After we realized that we could put paper through the printing press, like not a lot happened. Like we learned how to bind it and we knew how to open it. Not a lot happened after that. And so having books, no, not even bookstores, having publishers. So everything a lot of times has been on print. So with the arrival of digital, sort of gave us more opportunity to do a whole lot more.
Yes.
Yes. I know that a lot of people say that the book is dead, they're going to read. But one of the things that you realize is maybe depending on your market, because I can tell you for sure that, because a lot of times we use the US market as a standard, and at the time, because a lot of people were digitizing because there was that that declaration that the print book is dead, and everyone is going to switch to digital. But they found that this year, that the sales of print books have actually gone higher than digital books.
Wow, that's
so they have their own markets.
Yes.
So you have your own markets. The same way you have with audiobooks. Audiobooks has its market. Digital books, and there's a preference. I like seeing books all around. So it's not only knowledge for me, it's decor. I love it in my house. I love to spread it around. But also there's some books that I read on my iPad that I would rather have on my iPad than purchase the book. So a lot of times you're swinging between the two. It just depends on what heavy preference you have for any of them. But like I said, with digital, it may have brought the innovation of Amazon, which has improved our ability to distribute it internationally. It may have enabled us create the ebook, which is an amazing creation. But it's a very conservative industry. And not a lot. It would take a tsunami to sort of turn things around.
Okay.
But technology is welcome, and we're using it in many ways to collect data, to produce ebooks, and to expand it as many ways that we can. And then lots of things are changing, but depending on what they're changing. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
For example, it helps us track people's changing tastes. So, for instance, I grew up reading M&B's hard copy romance novels, but there has been a study that M&B's preference for reading M&B's is more digital than print. So a lot of people are stopping reducing rather printing romance novels, and they're selling them as e-form. which is actually something here in Nigeria that's actually happening as well. So those sort of things. So it's a conservative industry. Technology is welcome. We use it as best as we can. I think it has opened more opportunity for us to exploit as best ways to print, publish, and distribute. But beyond that, it's a pretty conservative,
So I guess any entrepreneur can choose, or you can do both. You could do print. You could choose to do.
Oh, definitely. I don't even see. You can't even choose. You have to do both.
You have to do both.
Yeah, you can't dismiss one after the other. No, you have to do both. There's no way. Just depending on where you'll find people who want to, if you
have a hard copy, and then also like what you said, the preference.
And then people who just want to read it on their iPad. You have to do both.
Yes.
There's no, you can't make a choice about that.
How sustainable is it? The
it's
book publishing.
Okay. I mean,
industry?
it's actually.
Because if you start, you have to have an end. You have to have a game plan.
You know what? I think that publishing is like, and this is the part where, despite the fact that I say specialist, I actually think it runs like a regular business. Like I was mentioning to you before we came on air, that one of the things I realized I learned when starting my business is you can never jump before you leap. Everything happens organically. So if you know, and that's why it's very important that you understand the industry that you are entering, you understand your vendors, your suppliers, you understand the processes, your value chain, you understand everything. Because if you understand it, you can plan, you can make marketing plans, you can make communication plans, you can make operational plans, you can make everything you need in order to increase business. It's cash that keeps your business afloat.
Absolutely.
It's not your grandiose ideas. I mean, your ideas should bring you money, but you have to find how to get people to give you money for it. So it's cash. So if you're able to get cash for those ideas.
How do you get cash for your business?
How do I get cash?
Yes.
I produce books and I sell them.
How do you market? How do you get to your target audience? How do you make sure that on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, you're selling a book? We sell books through bookstores and individually. We have our own store, which a third-party store on Konga that we help, and we do that because Konga, like Amazon, has a very wide and improved distribution network. So what may cost me, say, 3,000 naira to ship to someone in Port Harcourt, may just cost Konga 750 because you're shipping in volume. Yes.
The same way that Amazon does. So it's a very good process. So we have that, Konga store that we have there, and then we have bookstores whom we sell to in retail, and we sell in volume. So we sell and push it out there, and then we use digital to do our promotion, which is not a weird thing because I just learned that. I just learned that Random House, which is the biggest publishing company in the world, actually gradually are moving away from paper advertising, and then moving to digital advertising. That's how mostly they do the advertising these days. So that's what we have invested in.
You have to be online.
Yes. So we have our active social media pages. We're engaging, and we're constantly promoting our authors, our books. When we can, we do events and the rest of them, and then we have our bookstores, and we're constantly advertising where to find these things. It could be better if you have a library and you have other systems and infrastructure, but we don't. So we do the best that we can with what we can, but it's done mostly through digital.
Okay. Are there some misconceptions that you have heard about in the industry and that you would like to correct?
Well, the first thing is that people think that publishing is easy. They think it's just about, you want to produce a book, okay, take shoot it out. And I think it's also, it's driven also by the fact that you can go to Shomolu to do that. But really.
I should ask you a question about piracy, but finish first.
You could go to Shomolu to do that. Like you could go to Shomolu and they can promise you that they produce your book overnight. And truly, honestly, to God who made me, overnight they can make your book.
Out.
Yes, they can. You wouldn't have to go through any of the difficulties that I will put you through in an editorial process to make sure that your book is up to standard. you can produce a book. So a lot of times people come with that misconception, not understanding the processes that you have to go through. The most difficult part is the editorial, because I have to engage you, because you have to sit down and you have to think. It's a thinking process. You know, I have to send you stuff and you have to say, no, it doesn't work. You know, I always tell people, if you think that's difficult, really, there are pictures of Michelle Obama online going through Becoming, where she was writing notes. There's no way that you can do it in isolation. It is my job to tell you how to make this idea work, but I need you to participate in the process. But a lot of times you find people who don't want to participate in the process, just to produce it. I'm like, you take it to show me. Like, goodness gracious. You know, but I don't want, and I do always try to explain that's about value. You have to be part of it, creating that value for yourself.
Yes, and excellence is a part of
yes.
that value.
Yes.
Any other misconceptions?
Any misconceptions? Okay, no, I mean, that it's easy to write. Anybody can write. I've heard says because it's an easy entry business, because anybody can set up shop and just, you know, call themselves a publisher. Being in book publishing, we're sort of swept under bigger publishing companies like news publishing. People don't understand publishing, book publishing. So once they hear you're a publisher, they was like, oh, what newspaper? And I'm like, no, I don't operate newspaper. You know, or they think you're a press. You know, so either people think that if you're publishing or you're a printing press, but that's not the fact. A publisher is a different entity by itself. The printing press is good showing. Yes.
Let's talk about piracy.
Yes, let's talk about piracy.
What is being done, and how can we stop it? How can we end the culture? Because I wouldn't mention the book that recently came out, and before I knew it, I was in the car and I saw it being sold by, you know, the young men on the streets.
It's a huge problem.
Yes.
I was doing some research and I uncovered some of the reasons why piracy. And one of the reasons why it occurred in the time was because, according to the report, at the time, the naira devalued, you know, and Nigerians began to look for cheaper versions of affordable versions of what they could, you know, they could buy. So obviously, producing cheaper versions of a book, you know, photocopying it or so, you know, was
photocopying.
Yeah, photocopying. Because a lot of times, if you realize, if you did literature in school, you realize that the copy you read was a photocopied version. You always notice how it looks. Just photocopy.
Yes, it's not straight and it's bent and all.
Bent and
yeah.
So it was never you never got an original. I don't even know if there's an original copy of Things Fall Apart. So you know, that was at least one of the things I read, and it made a lot of sense. You know, at the time when we had a failing economy and basically and so it just never went away. Even though the Copyright Act was enacted,
yes,
it's to protect, you know, but it couldn't be protected because, you know, now, at least now, the piracy is not done here. The piracy is done in China. So they take our books without the overhead costs and they produce it and they come back and they reap where they do not. So it's a huge problem. As a matter of fact, you know, people also say that they use these monies to launder money as well. And as much as the government is trying, it doesn't seem to be working. You know, we have bodies in place that are trying to curb this as much as possible, but we don't understand how it's slipping through authority. And so we have, and especially educational books are the biggest victims. You know, because you just find market flooded with, especially when the book is on a WAEC list or a government, it's a huge problem. So protecting stopping piracy, it's a huge, as a matter of fact, Nigeria is the country with the worst piracy level. You know, it's the worst in the world, and it's affecting us in many ways. But it would take maybe if people who were caught and made examples of, you know, I don't know, because we've tried a lot. We've tried with putting standard ISOs. Okay. International standard stamps or something. We've tried, but they just seem to bypass it. We don't. You know, a lot of things have to be done to be able to eradicate that.
Wow. I would also like to find out if piracy is maybe a reason why a lot of people are not even interested or might not be interested in starting out in the publishing industry.
No.
Do you think?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Like, you know, the thing about publishing, like, you must really, really love this space to want to go into it, because it's a labor of love. No, really, it's a labor of love. Because a lot of times you may not see the fruit of your labor for quite a while, you know, but you just enjoy the process of helping people birth what it is that they do. So piracy doesn't stop. And remember, piracy doesn't happen with every book. Piracy, like my co-founder says, that if you see a trade book being pirated on the streets, it's actually a type of flattery. Like, your book was interesting.
Was good enough,
to be
yeah.
You know,
that's a good one. I never thought of it that way.
It's sort of flattery that actually, you've done something important.
Yeah,
you know, that
and everyone wants to read it. Yeah.
So you have, you know, no, it's not that at all. I think it's just, like, piracy doesn't deter anyone from starting a publishing company. If you know your onions, if you know how, you know what you're doing, anyone can. It's not every book that is pirated. Not every book. It's not.
Interesting. I think I've learned something today. Not every book is pirated. Where do you see this industry in the next 3 to 5 years?
You know, I know that's why I spoke about innovation. It's a very conservative innovation. Like, after that printing press happened, that we produced books in print form, we stayed in print form for a very, like, the entire world was like, come on, look at the car. The car has gone from the horse to the fossil engine to clean energy.
Yes.
So we're even thinking about putting it in the air evolution. So you can go fly. Like, what? Like, what are you going to do with it? Because they're really on your palm. But there's something interesting actually.
Okay.
So this past summer, I was actually attending a publishing course at the Yale University.
Okay.
And one of the most amazing things, actually, the Yale School of Management. And one of the things that I observed is that people are actually digitizing their libraries. Yes. So you may actually begin to go to libraries and find that there are no hard copy books. You would only find. And so the library at the Yale School of Management was actually digitized. Wow. And actually
I wonder what that looks like.
There are no books. They're all just computers.
Computers.
Yes.
Amazing.
So if you want a book, you just
type it in
and transfer it to whatever you have to transfer it. Wow. But there are no books. And
I think I've heard of a place somewhere in Dubai that you move content. So if it's music you want, you do something with it on the screen,
yes,
on the table, and it just, before you know, it's like Bluetooth or infrared. I don't know what
sort of like
technology just transfers it to your own device,
yes,
and that's it. You're good to go.
Yeah, even libraries are going. Okay, I said libraries before. Even traditional libraries,
yes,
because this is a school library. This is a school's library. Even libraries are beginning to adopt. Because I know that I forgot what library adopted it in the US, and it's been pretty successful. Like, people like the idea of a digitized library.
Yes.
So maybe that is the future. Maybe there will be no hard copy books in libraries anymore. Maybe it will make things easier. Maybe we'll be able to sell more books to people, knowing that they can read on their phones and read on their gadgets.
That mobility is very important.
The mobility is very important. Yeah. So maybe that would be the future of where we're heading to with books and distribution.
Yeah. So anyone starting out should think technology.
Yes.
Think technology. Yes. Thank you very much, Anwuli. You have spoken so well. Maybe I should consider starting a book publishing industry company.
Become an apprentice.
I think I will. Maybe do some 3 months, 6 months internship.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, that's it on SME Fast Track. We'll be right back.